But why does getting better and improving matter at all?
This is fascinating. Nobody's ever asked me that before. And frankly, I think I've taken for granted that growth is just intrinsically enjoyable and motivating. I mean, I think you made a case that maybe some people are not motivated by growth. I think that where I might push back on that is to say, we live in a world that glorifies performance. So, people feel like if they want to be respected or celebrated, they need to win a medal, they need to earn a trophy, they need to get an A+. And I think what we've lost sight of is that what people actually enjoy is a sense of progress, feeling like they have forward momentum. When I think about what does it look like to not grow, I don't think for most people that's good enough. I think that's stagnation. I think that's people saying, I'm stuck. I feel like my life isn't going anywhere. I feel like I'm squandering my potential. And I think that's a travesty. And so I think growth is part of how you feel like you're using your time well.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. And I'm glad no one's ever asked you that before, because I think I'm like that too. I kind of take for granted that I love growth and I love the idea of being better and improving. And I can't remember, I mean, it's been said a million times. It's like an age-old quote, but it goes, if you're not growing, you're dying. And I think that's the point, that we are either moving forward or we're moving backward. We're either getting faster and smarter, or we're getting slower and not smarter. And I think when you recognize that idea that there is no staying the same, there is no, we're just going to stay on this place and platform forever, you start recognizing, oh, I have to move forward. And the pace at which I move, how have you guided people with that? I find like often we compare our pace of growth and our pace of becoming better. And that's the hardest one, because you're like, well, they got that body in 3 months, or, you've been the top rated professor for 7 years. Like, I've only won that once, or whatever it may be. Pace of growth. How have you thought about pace of growth in your work?
For a long time, I believed the saying, the mantra that comparison is the thief of joy. I don't believe it anymore. I think envy is the thief of joy. I think social comparison is invaluable. I think we have to look to other people for inspiration. I think we look to other people for learning, not just what am I capable of, but also how do I get there? I think where we run into problems is when we stop admiring those people and we start wanting what they have, or feeling like I should have gotten what they got. And I think what's probably helpful is to make a different set of comparisons. Part of what you could do is not think so much about pace as maybe focus more on starting points. So maybe somebody who's growing faster than you actually just started with more advantages than you did, and you've traveled a greater distance. I don't think we pay enough attention to that, would be one thought. I think obviously comparing to ourselves is helpful too. And I think that so often when it comes to benchmarking progress, I want to tell people, okay, the person you're competing with is your past self, and the bar you're raising is for your future self. And if you can focus on that, it's a little bit easier to realize, all right, yeah, everybody has a different starting point. Everybody has a different pace. But if I could tell, actually, let me say this. I think so many people let their expectations rise with their progress. And so you set a goal today, you achieve it in 6 months. And then by the time it happens, it's almost a relief.
Yeah.
I didn't blow it.
Definitely.
There's no joy. There's no sense of meaning and purpose. You sort of expected it, and you would have been disappointed if it didn't happen. I think the way you avoid that is you get in touch with your past self. And you say, if 6 months ago me or 5 years ago me knew where I would land now, how proud would I have been? How excited would I have been? And if you keep that past self in mind, it's much easier to appreciate the strides that you're making.
I love that distinction you made as well between how comparison versus envy is the thief of joy. I think it's so subtle, but it's so nuanced and so powerful, because you're so right that I always think of it in the same way, that you either study someone or you envy them. And often the deeper you study someone, the less you'll envy them, because you'll actually realize how far they've come and what they had to get through and challenges they had. And you start getting the energy from that study to say, oh, maybe I have that within me too. And maybe I can find that within me too, because I have challenges.
I think for me, a really concrete example of that was I was terrified of public speaking when I decided to become a professor. Like, maybe it was the wrong profession. It's like, what are you doing here? But I remember even being a student and thinking about raising my hand in college, and I would start to physically shake. And by the time I got called on, sometimes I would forget what I was going to say, or I'd second guess it, or I'd stumble and stammer my way through it. And so the idea that I was now going to stand in front of a whole classroom or on a big stage was extremely daunting. So what did I do? I went to speakers that I really admired and started studying them, thinking this is going to help me. And the first one I picked was MLK.
Great pick. Really.
Yeah. I mean, what a great way to get demoralized. So I watched his dream speech. I tried to take notes on things I could learn from him. I wanted to know, well, how did he get there? And so I start reading about it. He's 34 years old when he gives that speech. I might as well quit. I cannot believe it's the greatest speech in American history, done by somebody who's, not even close to his prime. And I think if I had stopped there, I would have quit. And it would have been easy to walk away from MLK as just an impossible role model. And let's be clear, he is an impossible role model. I could work on public speaking for an infinite number of years, every minute of every day, and never come close to that. What was helpful, though, was then sort of rewinding and realizing we usually see our role models at their peak. And we don't have the starting point. We don't have the distance they've traveled. So how did MLK get here? And turns out he started entering public speaking competitions when he was 15 years old. That was 2 decades of practice. The year he did his dream speech, he gave over 350 talks. And so, if you think about the cumulative progress that was made, that's multiple lifetimes, of effort. So I think that's the kind of sort of analysis that we need to do. And I don't think most of us do that.
Yeah, absolutely.